relationships.
Yeah. Oh, creating is all about that, isn't it? Because you're not here alone.
Yep, I'm here with my daughter from Sydney, and we both agree that relationships are the hardest thing in life.
Hardest thing?
Seems to be.
Well, it's because, and we're just going to talk briefly and then we'll hear from you. The reason relationships seem to be, to a lot of people, like the hardest thing is because in relationships you have, lured isn't quite the right word, but you've trained people away from their own guidance and asked them to accept what you want about them to be the guidance. And since every single person wants something a little different from you, it makes you crazy. If there are two people in your life and one thinks you should do this and the other thinks you should do that, you've got big trouble. But if you're not prone to moving in the direction of what either one of them want, instead you're following your own guidance, and they've come to know that about you, then they can have this detached appreciation of your successful life without getting invested in it. Jerry used to say to people, if I ask your opinion about something and you give it to me and I don't follow your guidance, would that upset you? And if they say no, then Jerry would say, okay, then I'd like to know what you think about this. But he wanted them to know that there was a very strong probability that he was not going to do what they thought he should do. He just wanted to collect the data. And that's a really good relationship to have with other people. I love playing with you, and together we are identifying things that we all want, but I'm not going to turn my power over to you, so don't get used to it.
Right. So we have, in a relationship, a partnership, we have an expectation. We have our own expectations of what a good relationship should entail. So we have, the key word is expectations.
You have what?
And if the other person isn't fulfilling the expectation.
But what you're talking about is conditional living. I'll be happy if you'll do this. If it were different, it would be perfect. And so I need you to behave in this way so that I can feel better. And if you've got someone in your life that is willing to perform in those ways, then they're most likely taking you away from your own guidance and away from any real satisfaction that you will ever have. So what you want to say to others is, I love you so much, and what you think is interesting to me, and I'm willing to collect the data of it, but I've got my own guidance system, and I got to march to the beat of my own drummer. Because otherwise it's like this. You think I should do this, and I want to please you, so I do that. And since I was listening to you instead of infinite intelligence, it might not go that well. And then who's mad at who? Everybody's mad at everybody. But if instead you are loving them for their awareness of you and really appreciating their well wishes and accepting that everyone wants you to thrive, doesn't it add up that if they want you to thrive and if you've found a way to thrive, then they're happy? But so many relationships are based upon people not thriving and then just looking for a sounding board.
Which is wrong.
Yeah. And here's a really easy way to sort this out. We've had this conversation through the years many times, but now we have another way of looking at it. Let's say that someone has a strong opinion about something that you should or should not do. Maybe it's a person, maybe it's an organization, maybe it's a religion. And you are really well connected with your own guidance system. We just want you to consider at all these options along the way that come to you. Are you under the influence of your inner being, or are you under the influence of society? Your inner being is always coming from love. Is everyone that is guiding you from a human perspective? There are a lot of people that have their own motives for why they want you to do what you do. Some people are not really rooting for your thriving. Your inner being always is. And of course, the people that you love, you want to believe that they are rooting for you. But what if they're not tuned in and not turned on and not tapped in? What if they are suffering? What if they're worried about you? What if they're worried about things going well for you? So in their worry, they've got no true connection to any true knowledge. And if you're under the influence of that, is that going to serve you as much as if you're under the influence of infinite intelligence that knows everything that you're asking for? Maybe a comfortable way to say it to those who are up close to you, who might understand what you're doing, is, I love you so much, but please don't ask me to make you responsible for my happiness. It won't turn out well. Let me be responsible for my happiness, and you just root from the sidelines for me.
Thank you. Can I
Yes?
ask one more question?
Whatever you want.
This is my daughter's question. She would love a wonderful, perfect relationship. And, you know, she wants to know, how do I know if the relationship that I'm in is actually right to go forward with, or,
well, here's the thing.
not?
You can't know until you've practiced showing yourself what satisfaction is. And once you've practiced knowing for sure what satisfaction is, then that vibration can increase to the velocity, to the momentum, that it will ring your bells so loud that there's no question in your mind. So many relationships, people are sort of settling because they go this way and this way and this way and this way, and they haven't really tapped in to what they really want, and so they don't know if they're really moving in the direction of what they really want. Usually, an existing relationship does have the capability of being all that you want, but the relationship that you have is more about what you're doing with your inner being than it is about what you're doing with the other person. You keep wanting to make your primary relationship be about you and the other person instead of about you and your inner being. And once you make it about you and your inner being so that you know what satisfaction is and you're looking for satisfaction and you're finding it, then the details of your relationship can become more and more and more and more and more till it's ringing your bells so loudly that there's no question in your mind. There's just no question in your mind. Everybody on the planet could say, oh, I think you're making a mistake. And you would say, your opinion's just fine, but get out of my way. I know what I'm doing. This is who I want. This is where I'm going. All of these questions, under the influence of what? Under the influence of what? And of course, the conversations are a little lacking until you know for sure what you're under the influence of. And it won't take you more than 3 or 4 days after this conversation to have a pretty good idea of what's satisfying and what's not, of what you're under the influence of and what you're not under the influence of. When you find yourself pondering something and you have that sort of icky feeling in your stomach, stop and laugh. It's clear. I'm not under the influence of Source, or I'd be feeling better. And then if it's early enough when you catch yourself, Jerry used to talk about sitting in front of a fireplace and the log is sparking and the spark comes off of the log and gets on his sweater, and if he sees it happen and just flicks it off, nothing happens. But if he doesn't notice it and it sits there for a minute, it will burn a hole in his sweater. And it's the same with these thoughts. If an unsatisfying thought comes and you flick it off, as you reach for another satisfying thought, which is easy to do in those early stages where there's not much momentum going either way, that's when you make your best choices. But if you wait until you've got long patterns of thought about something and you're trying to flick it off, your whole body's on fire and you still haven't done anything about it, and then you feel like it's hopeless when it isn't. Start a new day every day. Mm-hmm. Yeah?
Yep.
Enough?
Yep.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good.